Okay. Sorry, I know the last video cut off. So I was saying that retribution is punishment for the sake of punishment itself. Whereas, and by the way, retribution can, so retribution is like a person's just desserts, we say, right? You're getting your just desserts. And that can encompass rehabilitation, but generally in practice it doesn't. Especially considering that every single one, now this one isn't up for debate, statistically speaking, psychologically speaking, neurologically speaking, nothing. This is just the answer. Fear, and fear is not as excellent of a teacher as the education that comes with rehabilitation. So beating your kid or smacking your kid or whatever is not going to help you educate your child, as well as non-violent tactics. The same, by the way, with our pets. If you beat your dog, we have another, or your child, we have another discussion that we need to have, and you need to go to jail for that, either one of those things. But if you smack your dog and make him fear you, that doesn't work as well as rewarding him when he does good things, and giving him the cold shoulder when he does bad things. So violence has been illustrated time and time again, and it's just not up for debate anymore, to not be as good of a teacher, and it also does not help rehabilitation. So, for instance, our prison system in the United States does not work as well as prison systems in quite a number of other countries. First world and second world countries, they simply have better systems that have less recidivism. Keep in mind too that, because our prison system in the United States is, I don't even know that much about it. I don't know, I'm not an expert in it, and I still know the amount of rape is unprecedented. Murder, beatings, and this is among the prisoners. Just obviously there's more violence that occurs between the guards and the prisoners, but that's a separate discussion. We don't even need to talk about that in order to make the point. So what happens is somebody goes in for a couple of years for something minor, non-violent crime, becomes, as it were, hardened by the system and the experience that is mere retribution. There's no rehabilitative aspect to it. He comes out, and he is less likely to be a good citizen. So now he's more violent than when he went in. And this goes for people who go into the prison system for violent crimes. In the United States, the statistics are that if you go in once, you are, I don't know what the percentage is, you are, like 80, it's like 80 times more likely to go in again. So the recidivism rates in the United States are off the charts. Our prison system just needs to have an overhaul of some kind, but because it is mostly retributive instead of rehabilitative, which is unfortunate. So what ends up happening, it doesn't matter how much you think that these guys should be punished for what they've done. Of course they should be punished. People need to be punished when they've done something wrong. Nevertheless, they don't need to come out being worse, because then they come out on the streets with me. And then they're more of a danger. Why do I want that? I don't want that. And I don't want them all to stay in there. If you care so much about where your tax dollars are going, I don't really want my tax dollars going more to just housing criminals who are being treated worse than animals and becoming more horrific than any animal ever could be. And then coming out around me, I want my tax dollars going to something like education. That's better. That's rehabilitative for anybody. I want my tax dollars going to education in prisons. Which, by the way, I've wanted to teach classes in prisons, but that's really hard to do. I discovered. But at the very basis, I want to be safe. So if those guys get worse in prison, and then they're eventually, they're on parole or whatever, I don't want them out on the streets with me being even more violent than when they went in. That doesn't sound effective. That sounds bad. Being in prison just in general is retributive. There's just no doubt that being locked up in a cell and, not being able to, if you have children, be with your children, have sex, go to the movies, do the normal things that we all do. Not being able to have that kind of privacy and autonomy, of course, is punishment. But I would like to see these people also getting an education, doing better things, starting to learn real integrity and learn who they are, why they're here, and what to do in the world, good things. That sounds better. I'd rather have those kinds of people back out on the street afterward than the guys and women who are put out on the street after they're in our prison system. The statistics show that it doesn't work. That's it. So the queen in the story illustrates the kind of wisdom that backs up rehabilitation over mere retribution. The king, on the other hand, is like, he doesn't even put any thought into it. Right away. Now, we've already discussed that the wife of Bath is a pretty legit woman. She's pretty wise. She's pretty worthy. The queen, then, also has illustrated herself as being worthy. And remember, by the way, this is the wife of Bath's tale. She is herself really the one putting forth, okay, really Chaucer is putting it forth, but he's putting this insight about rehabilitation versus retribution into the mouths of women. So evidently his attitude about women, positive. And given that we already know that Chaucer was writing a serious social commentary, not just about the church, but about other crazy things like gender roles that were we have them now, but I don't want to be a woman in the Middle Ages. There's no way. You couldn't pay me enough money to be a woman you couldn't pay me enough money to be a man during the Middle Ages because it was awful, but definitely not a woman. Definitely not. The misogyny to the nth degree. Women were chattel. Women were no better than slaves most of the time. And Chaucer is illustrating that women are actually just as wise and virtuous and worthy and noble and intelligent and interesting and complex as men. Okay, now, the old crone, the old hag. I love that. Those are the names. It's so funny. This is such a good story. So if you go to page 297, this is in our, I'm sorry, this is in our readings book. On the right-hand column. So this is after she has married the knight, and, you know, he's all pissy that he has to, I mean, they're in their wedding bed and everything, and after they've been married, and she's laying there and waiting for him to get out of the bathroom, and he's very upset. And she, you know, she says, "What's wrong? You know, dear husband, why would you be so upset to come into bed with your wife?" And he levels all these criticisms at her. She's old and ugly and poor and of low birth, right? Not noble. So, by the way, you could be poor, you could not have any money left, but still be of noble birth. You still have those noble bloodlines. So we have that sort of idea, even in the United States today, when we talk about the old money. So you may have, you know, the fancy last name, the bloodlines of the Kennedys or the Rockefellers or the Carnegies or whatever it may be, but you could actually just have no money right now, but you have that noble birth. So those are two different criticisms that he levels at her. She's poor and she's of low birth. She doesn't even have that sort of old money bloodline to her. So I'm not going to go through everything, but starting on 297, she goes, I mean, this is the longest, you'll notice, the longest dialogue, well, it's not, monologue in the piece. The old crone. The woman, the old, ugly, lowly, poor woman, has the majority of spoken parts in this tale. So, if this were a play, the lead role, the person, the actor who would the actor cast who would have to be the best actor and carry the play would be the old hag. Right there. We can already see she's very important to the integrity of the story itself. A woman. Now, we see the content of her beautiful monologue. Right there, so we see these lines, see the line numbers, the little tiny numbers off to the side of the text there. So on 297, right at the top, right-hand column, if you go down, so line 255 or so, just now, she said, you spoke of gentle birth, gentle or noble, like a gentleman, right? So the term gentleman, it doesn't now, I mean, not in the United States, we just mean it as a man, you know, ladies and gentlemen, right? But at this time, and then later on, and certainly even in England, this word still means something a little different than it does in the United States. But a gentleman was a man who did not have to, he was so wealthy and came from such bloodlines that he didn't have to work for his money. So if you were a gentleman and didn't have to work, you were even, I mean, you were much higher in some instances than a lawyer or a doctor. That seems foreign to us to some important degree. I mean, Paris Hilton, those kinds of people are illustrations of the sort of new gentleman, right? She has never had to do anything. Her parents just always had all this money. But I don't know if she has more prestige or respect than a doctor. She may not. We have we understand working for your money differently in the United States, and certainly today, than in, the Middle Ages in England, and, all the way through the 19th century. But now, so just now she said, you spoke of gentle birth, such as descends from ancient wealth and worth, those bloodlines, right? If that's the claim you make for gentlemen, such arrogance is hardly worth a hen. It's arrogant to think that way. Whoever loves to work for virtuous ends, public and private, and who most intends to do what deeds of gentleness he can, you take him to be the greatest gentleman. So, right here, if I were lecturing to humans in front of me, which would be better than this, I would say, what is she talking about? Who is she saying is actually more worthwhile? Or she's setting up a juxtaposition. What is it, right? Okay, I guess I just have to answer it. Obviously, it's not the person who works for money who is the more worthy, superior human. It's the person who works for virtue, either public or private. So either virtuous, to be virtuous himself, like somebody like Marcus Aurelius, who said, I can't do anything about you. That's all, the logos, your own free will, all I can do is control myself, right? He worked for his own personal virtuous ends because he understood that to be the only thing that he had any control over. Or somebody who says, I'm not going to spend all my time trying to have money. I'm going to spend my time volunteering or working for Greenpeace or whatever, right? Giving back to the community or the world at large. Those are virtuous ends, either public or private. And that's what she's saying, is makes you a gentleman. You're not a gentleman because you have money. You're a gentleman because you have a Christian, Christian, loving, compassionate, giving to the other kind of life. Right? So that's one thing, blah, blah, blah. And next page, 298, left-hand column, so lines, let's see, 324-ish, 23. As for my poverty, which you reprove, Almighty God himself, in whom we move, mysticism there, believe, and whom we move, believe, and have our being, chose a life of poverty, and every man or wife, nay, every child can see our heavenly King would never stoop to choose a shameful thing. There's no shame in poverty if the heart is gay. So she makes two sort of points there. One of which is that, so she's saying she is using the standard Christian, and I mean that in all three schools, Roman Catholicism, Eastern Orthodox, and Protestantism, that Jesus is the human incarnation of God. Jesus and God are identical. Same thing. Okay. They are not three different beings. It's one being, a unity that exists in three different forms. So she says that God himself chose to be incarnated in Jesus as a carpenter. Yeah, under the Roman Empire, being a carpenter was pretty lowly. You didn't have any money. That's not, if you wanted to have money under the Roman Empire, you sure as hell didn't become a carpenter. You didn't become a laborer, for crying out loud. So, if God chose to be a human on earth and to be poor, to choose a life of poverty, then I guess poverty isn't such a bad thing. It's not wrong to be poor. It's not inferior to be poor. In fact, maybe if that's what God chose to be, that means that it